Good evening, I'm John Carter and welcome to Poland Daily. The Polish Teachers' Union and the Supporting Workers' Union Federation will not take part in the roundtable talks regarding changes in the Polish education system on Friday. The leader of the Polish Teachers' Union, Sławomir Broniarz, announced today that the teachers' strike will continue. Moreover, the strike committee called for the directors of schools to gather their respective school boards and conclude the end-of-year grading of the students graduating from high schools and technical high schools, which is imperative for them to finish their mandatory education.
Thousands of teachers, led by the leaders of the workers' unions, gathered in front of the Ministry of Education to manifest their support for the continuation of the protests. The Polish Teachers' Union proposed a 30% salary raise. After the last meeting in the Social Dialogue Council, they decided this raise could be split into 3 even installments. In turn, the government proposed to extend the teachers' working week by 2 hours, which would come with a 250 zloty raise for certified teachers. This proposal was promptly rejected by the union. I just want to remind you that according to the Institute for Educational Research, a teacher's working week equals to 47 hours. We do not agree with the Prime Minister's tales about the amount of work we put in. The unionists blame the government for the failure of being able to reach an agreement. Since March 4th, the government knew that April 8th would be the first day of the strike. The government did not take a single step towards reaching a consensus. Sławomir Broniarz said that he's considering whether or not to participate in the Social Dialogue Council meeting scheduled for Friday. The Polish Teachers Association is set to decide the fate of the protest. All signs point to the strike continuing, which would put the final high school exams in danger. The protesting teachers plan to hold another manifestation on Wednesday.
The Polish President, Andrzej Duda, has signed a bill regarding a single retirement financial bonus. Thanks to the Retirement Plus programme, every retired Pole will receive around 882 zloty. The 13th pension will reach almost 10 million retired Poles in May.
Jednorazowe świadczenie skierowane do prawie 10.
It's a single financial bonus for almost 10 million Poles, for people who too often need to count every penny until the next month comes and are not in the best financial situation. The bonus of 1,100 zlotys gross, which is around 882 zlotys net, will particularly help them realize any plans they had to postpone for better times. Maybe it will allow them to take a long-wanted vacation or simply ease their everyday difficulties. One more thing to be said, this money won't be deducted in any way. The 882 zlotys will be sent as an extra bonus, as a way to show our respect and support for the elderly, who are an important part of our society.
A scandal has erupted in regards to the funding of the Polish Foundation Open Dialogue, run by Ludmiła Kozłowska and Bartosz Kramek. According to the British newspaper The Sunday Times, the money for the operation of the Open Dialogue Foundation was, among others, transmitted through straw companies registered in Scotland. Aleksandra Zarzycka has more.
Allegations in the British Sunday Times newspaper against the Open Dialogue Foundation based in Warsaw, Poland are quoting the results of an investigation by the Moldovan Parliamentary Commission and sound very serious. The foundation allegedly accepted 1.5 million British pounds from Scottish straw companies in exchange for lobbying for 2 oligarchs in Moldova, and the money allegedly came from Russian arms deals through the tax haven countries. According to the Times, Open Dialogue has obligations against special services. The head of the foundation, Ludmiła Kozłowska, was deported from Polish territory in August 2018 and placed on the list of persons not allowed to enter the European Union on the grounds of illegal funding. During that time, a large part of the Polish opposition were defending her. Some of the European countries even lifted the ban, and she was allowed into Belgium and Britain, among others. She was also invited to speak by some of the EU institutions. Many European politicians should now answer why they were backing this woman, the head of the Open Dialogue Foundation, why they were criticizing the Polish government at the time. Now we are finding out that the Polish national security correctly assessed the role of that foundation.
na to, że to polskie służby i polskie władze miały rację.
Jeżeli Agencja Bezpieczeństwa Wewnętrznego używa tego typu...
If the Polish Internal Security Agency uses this type of atomic bomb to deport this woman without giving any explanation to the public, then something is wrong. I do not remember us being given any explanation. There was no proof of wrongdoing when Ludmila Kozłowska was deported from Poland. It is no surprise that in a democratic country, such a decision being announced without any reason being given had to raise some eyebrows.
W państwie prawa taka decyzja musiała budzić wątpliwości.
Wielokrotnie mówiłem, że to jest organizacja, która budzi kontrowersje.
I said repeatedly that this is an organization which raises many doubts when it comes to the funding of their operations. These types of things should be checked. I did not criticize the decision, but the way it was announced to the public.
Uzasadnione podejrzenia, że może dojść do pewnych nieprawidłowości.
Bartosz Kramek, szef Rady Fundacji Otwarty Dialog.
Bartosz Kramek, the chairman of the board of the Open Dialogue Foundation and privately the husband of Ludmila Kozłowska, published instructions in 2017 on how to overthrow the Polish government. Part of those instructions called for unrest and demonstrations being organized by various professions, including judges and teachers. The spokesperson of the Open Dialogue Foundation rejects the allegations, calling them conspiracy theories.
Do pikiety.
The comedian Volodymyr Zelensky won Sunday's presidential election in Ukraine. However, commentators are wondering whether he will actually present a political programme or remain elusive until the parliamentary election in October.
Many were surprised by the fact that Zelensky managed to win the presidential election without ever presenting a coherent political program. This is not the time for a pathetic political speech. I just want to say thank you. I don't think that this will be a very active presidency, pushing through a lot of reforms. Instead, I expect more focus on PR stunts and similar tricks. The unexpected winner avoided contact with journalists as much as possible during the campaign. He also never declared who will he appoint to the important post of Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs. During Petro Poroshenko's 5 years in power, it could be said that Ukraine was dominated by the spirit found in the province of Galicia. It means that we had a nationalist Ukraine, focusing heavily on strengthening the position of the Ukrainian language and anchoring itself in the tradition of the Ukrainian insurgent army, the nationalist military underground organization active during the Second World War. Zelensky is a very different politician. President-elect Zelensky, since he won't assume office until the beginning of June, has stressed a number of times in recent weeks that he won't change Ukraine's pro-EU and pro-NATO stance. Zelensky has already been the president of Ukraine for a couple of years, however only in the TV series Servant of the Nation. The storyline is based on a teacher who unexpectedly becomes president after a rant of his against corruption goes viral. During his campaign, Zelensky strongly played on the anti-corruption card and the high degree of distrust the Ukrainian public has for its political class. Experts argue that Zelensky won't reveal his cards before the parliamentary elections in late October and will try to continue riding the wave of disgust for Ukrainian lawmakers, which made it possible for him to be elected president.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm John Carter. Stay tuned for after the break for Poland Daily weather. That's followed by business, culture, history, and finally the travel.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. In this night, sky will be a little overcast on the north. In other regions, sky will be cloudless. Temperature will increase to 8 degrees in Zielona Góra. The minimum temperature will be 5 degrees. Night will be breezy. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. In most regions, we may expect plenty of sunlight. We will see the highest temperature 20 degrees on the south and on the west. In central Poland, temperature will range about 18 and 19 degrees. The minimum 17 degrees will be in Gdańsk, Rzeszów and Lublin. We don't expect any rainfall that day. Pressure will fall. Wind will be gusty. Let's see the forecast for the next days. On Thursday, sunlight will appear in all regions, but little rainfall is expected on the northwest. On Friday, temperature will rise to 28 degrees in central Poland. Along the Baltic coast, thunderstorms is expecting. On Sunday, temperature will fall to 16 degrees. Around Rzeszów, we will see downpour and thunderstorms. Goodbye and see you soon.
watching Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Nick Sadowski from the New York. Sir, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
As a Polish-American businessman, you've been a target of Donald Trump's campaign in 2016. He visited, as the first president since 70 years, Polish Americans and directed to them his message, promising lower taxes, better condition for small and middle-sized businesses in the United States. And the question to you is, how about delivering those promises?
Well, I think his famous speech in Gettysburg, which I think turned the table and made him win the campaign, he made a lot of promises. Not all of them are being followed as we wish, but the main ones are. And I think he's delivering on, from the businessman perspective, from the small and medium businessman perspective, he's delivering. They're lowering the taxes. And when you take a look at the American business world economy today, you can see an improvement, right? We have a very low unemployment rate. I think it's at 4. GDP rose to 4.1. This is what he exactly promised, that he's going to drive it up to 4%. He just crossed to 4.1. Of course, it's not a trend yet. Okay, to be a trend, you need a couple more quarters to see that this is the trend. But I would say in this perspective, he's delivering on for small and medium business.
Let's try get to the specific issues. What is Donald Trump doing that other presidents failed to do?
Taxes. Taxes for small and medium corporations, for the small businesses. You can actually feel the difference. When when the year ends and you have to do your taxes, you can see how much money you saved, and this money can be reinvested. You can hire more people. You can buy more product to manufacture. So this is one of the major drivers, I think.
He's also pulling the manufacturers to the country. For 20, 30 years, manufacturers were leaving the United States, leaving the Midwest, leaving those desperate people who work there for whole their lives, and suddenly they will be left out of anything.
And there's a huge question about the trade wars right now, right? Because everybody's saying, oh, Trump is starting the trade wars, how it's going to end. Well, my take is on this is simple. Depending how the trade wars, how are we going to start tariffing other countries? You have to remember that the United States was a victim of unfair game from China, from Europe. We didn't really care about ourselves. And we killed our industry also, allowing the trade unions to really go wild. So if you, let's say, hire 30 people in a medium business, small business, and you have trade unions, and they tell you you have to pay them $40, $50, $60 an hour, where you have people that will easily take that job for $25, $30, and there's a line of people, but you cannot hire those people. You have to hire the trade union people. The businessmen will drive the business outside of the country, where they can have the working force for $12 an hour.
Or in Mexico.
Or in Mexico.
Okay. Yeah. So that's improving. American Poles are happy with Donald Trump.
I think business people, yes. I mean, Donald Trump is a very specific person. I'm not a huge fan of the way that he presents himself and he talks. He's a businessman. He's not a clean-cut politician who is like smiling everywhere. He's a straightforward guy. He bankrupted many times, so he learned the risks. Okay, he built his empire. So if he's taking his experience and putting into the politics, into the economy of the United States, I think it's good.
What happened to this huge infrastructure program that Donald Trump promised to rebuild the highways of America, like I-95, like airports that look like third world right now?
I'll be honest with you, I'm looking forward to this because America is falling apart. And if we start taking care of infrastructure, this will create enormous amount of jobs for decades, okay? And we need that. The bridges are falling, the roads are in not too great shapes. So I hope that he will deliver on this.
Midterm elections are a few weeks from now. And this will be, as many observers say, the popular vote on whether you like Donald Trump or not?
Well, it's a big question. You have to remember that you are what you eat, and this is also what you absorb as news. Now, news in the United States are totally against, all the news corporations totally against the Trump.
So we will see what people will say. People will have their say in a few weeks, and the same in Poland. We will have another municipal election, so everyone is looking forward to the results. Nick Sadowski from New York was our guest, and that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. In most regions, we may expect plenty of sunlight. We will see the highest temperature, 20 degrees, on the south and on the west. In central Poland, temperature will range about 18 and 19 degrees. The minimum 17 degrees will be in Gdańsk, Rzeszów and Lublin. We don't expect any rainfall that day. Pressure will fall, wind will be gusty. Let's take a look at the forecast for our continent. In the Balkans, temperature will range from 18 to 22 degrees in Athens. Temperature will little fall in Scandinavia to 17 in Oslo and 18 in Stockholm. In British Islands, we may expect rainfall. There, the temperature will range from 13 to 16 degrees in London. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Hello, this is Poland Daily Culture. I'm Paulina Otterstein, and today we're in Czarnolas, where Jan Kochanowski, a great 16th century poet, used to live and work. Let's go.
Thou hast made all the house an empty thing, dear Ursula, by this thy vanishing. Though we are here, it's yet a vacant place, one little soul, and filled so great a space. For thou didst sing thy joyousness to all, running through every nook of house and hall. Thou wouldst not have thy mother grieve, nor let thy father with too solemn thinking fret his head, but thou must kiss them, daughter mine, and all with that entrancing laugh of thine. Now on the house has fallen a dumb blight. Thou wilt not come with archness and delight, but every corner lodges lurking grief, and all in vain the heart would seek relief.
You mentioned that his studies and certain events in his life influenced his art greatly. Could you tell us how the Renaissance itself influenced his art?
Właściwie w każdym z utworów, nawet we fraszkach.
In almost all of his work, even in epigrams, we can see Kochanowski's turn towards the Renaissance humanism, especially in songs. Kochanowski was often referred to as the second Horace, who came up with the phrase carpe diem, seize the day. Kochanowski wrote about everything in a way he opened himself up to the reader. There were no taboo subjects for him. If he was unhappy, he wrote about that as well.
Mówił o wszystkim. Właściwie nie było w jego twórczości tematów tabu. Jeżeli był nieszczęśliwy, to o tym po prostu pisał.
He was a prime example of the Renaissance humanism. He tried new things, new literary trends. He lived his life fully, but he also knew how to tell a joke and who to tell it to, whether he was talking to a simple or an educated person. He had a deep personality, but at the same time he was very down to earth, so his figure is close to us, even after a few centuries have passed, due to his openness and directness. First and foremost, he taught himself to be a poet, even though he did many other things. Like I mentioned, he had 2 rectories. He was also a royal secretary. As a 29-year-old man, after he had returned from Italy, he must have been at a crossroads in life, and he must have thought of becoming a priest.
Na pewno gdzieś przez myśl mu przemknęło, żeby związać swoje życie z karierą duchownego.
He had the lower priesthood ordination, so there was seemingly no downside to this career choice. However, it did not happen, and he married when he was 45, so at a very old age. His wife was a 20-something-year-old Dorota from the house of Podlodowscy. Her father, Stanisław Podlodowski, was a great orator in the Polish parliament during the reigns of both Zygmunts.
Znana rodzina właśnie tu z ziemi radomskiej.
So it was a well-known family from the Radom region. Kochanowski kept very good relations with his wife's family, especially with her brothers. He had to give up his priest benefits before the marriage, which he did and later built a house in Czarnolas. He wrote a very famous epigram, Na dom w Czarnolesie, or for a house in Czarnolas, which he was very proud to have written. He moved there with his wife and had 8 children with her. Unfortunately, only 4 of his daughters lived to adulthood. Urszula, for whom he wrote the famous laments, died at a very young age. A year later, so did Hania. And then his only son died as well, already after Kochanowski has passed away. Kochanowski's wealth was passed to one of his daughters, Poliksena, and then to her son, grandson, and grand-grandson. After that, it was passed between families unconnected to the Kochanowski line.
Majątek przechodził właśnie bardzo często z rąk, do rodzin niezwiązanych z rodziną Kochanowskich. I właściwie troszeczkę pod koniec XVII wieku już pamięć o Kochanowskim się zacierała.
At the end of the 17th century, the memory of Jan Kochanowski was fading away. In 1720, his house burned down and it was never really rebuilt. Then, in 1770, Czarnolas lost a very important memorial, the famous linden tree, which was described by Kochanowski in 3 of his epigrams. However, in the second half of the 18th century, Józef Aleksander Jabłonowski bought Czarnolas simply to preserve the memory of Jan Kochanowski.
Zakupił Czarnolas tylko po to, żeby utrwalać tu pamięć po Janie Kochanowskim.
He actually expanded Czarnolas. Sadly, he was a very busy man, so he couldn't spend much time there, but his next 2 wives took care of the estate. Nonetheless, he didn't realize his great plans to expand Czarnolas as much as he wanted to. Only after Magdalena Raczyńska, the wife of the Wielkopolski foreman Kazimierz Raczyński, the creator of Rogalin near Poznań, settled here, she tried to preserve as much as she could of Kochanowski's heritage. She began to build the chapel, constructed out of brick, which some say was built with bricks from Kochanowski's old house. But it hasn't been proven scientifically.
Utrwalać wszystko, co się jeszcze da, co związane jest z Janem Kochanowskim. Rozpoczęła budowę właśnie kaplicy.
Magdalena Raczyńska began the chapel's construction and her daughter Teresa Jabłonowska finished it. She, just as the Duchess Izabel Czartoryska from Puławy, had a dream of building a museum about Kochanowski, and that's what she did. She gathered a collection of artifacts connected to the great writer, which were displayed in the chapel.
I tak też się stało. Taka kolekcja została przez nią utworzona, prezentowana była w kaplicy. Były to głównie wydania dzieł Jana Kochanowskiego. Były to...
It were, among other things, his handwritten poems, but also a pair of doors found when the chapel was being constructed. There was also the famous Czarnolas armchair.
Szczęśliwie z tamtej kolekcji zachował się fotel i drzwi. Są to takie...
For some time the museum was working well. Teresa's son, Władysław, sadly had to operate in a different time. It was after the January uprising, so he had to sell many of the items from the collection to make a living. Luckily, door and the armchair remained it. The door is a very beautiful piece of work, with Kochanowski's initials and his crest. When it comes to the armchair, its decorations are from an old time. so maybe it survived the fire and was then renovated in Baroque style.
Zbudowany już w oparciu o dekorację barokową.
Most of the exhibits here are from different collections. How did they end up here?
Eksponaty, które są
Most of the exhibits here were bought over time, mostly from private owners, but also some are borrowed from other museums.
wypożyczone z innych
Like the 19th century painting by Karol Miller entitled The Visit to Czarnolas from the National Museum in Krakow. It's a beautiful painting portraying the visit of Jan Zamoyski and his brother Jan z Barczyna.
który ilustruje
But the painting is most likely just the author's imagination. Zamoyski's visit hasn't been confirmed by historians.
ale jest to obraz oparty właściwie na wyobraźni samego artysty.
Jan Kochanowski was a Polish Renaissance poet who established poetic patterns that would become integral to the Polish literary language. He is commonly regarded as the greatest Polish poet before Adam Mickiewicz and the greatest Slavic poet prior to the 19th century. Kochanowski was born at Cycyna near Radom, Poland. Little is known of his early education. At 14, fluent in Latin, he was sent to the Krakow Academy. After graduating in 1547, at age 17, he attended the University of Königsberg in Ducal Prussia and Padua University in Italy. At Padua, Kochanowski came in contact with the great humanist scholar Francesco Robotello. Kochanowski closed his 15-year period of studies and travels with a final visit to France, where he met the poet Pierre Ronsard. In 1559, Kochanowski returned to Poland for good, where he remained active as a humanist and Renaissance poet. He spent the next 15 years close to the court of King Sigismund II Augustus, serving for a time as royal secretary. Kochanowski settled on a family estate at Czarnolas, Blackwood, to lead the life of a country squire. In 1575, he married Dorota Podlodowska, with whom he had 7 children. Kochanowski is sometimes referred to in Polish as Jan z Czarnolasu, John of Blackwood. It was there that he wrote his most memorable works, including the dismissal of the Greek envoys and the Laments. Kochanowski died, probably of a heart attack, in Lublin on August 22, 1584.
As you already know from our episode, we're in Czarnolas in Poland, and it's a place that played a very important role in Kochanowski's life, because not only he lived here with his family and children, but also he wrote one of his most famous pieces, the Lamentations, exactly here where we're now. And not only there's a beautiful museum behind us, but also this place is surrounded by a very, very beautiful park. It's a place worth visiting for everyone coming to Poland, and I assure you that you're gonna love it. Join us again on our next episode of Poland Daily Culture, and we also have a new YouTube channel called Poland Daily Live, so don't forget to subscribe to it. See you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. We are here at the city of Lublin, one of the most historical and largest cities of all of Eastern Poland. Today, we are going to the Catholic University of Lublin, a bastion of the anti-communist movement during the time when Poland is in the grip of the Soviet Union. It was also the home to Karol Wojtyła, who would later on become Pope John Paul II. There, we will talk to a historian who specializes in 20th century history. As we know, this university that we're at is actually pretty closely tied to the Pope John Paul II. And I was wondering if you can tell us what are his influence on the university and on the culture as general.
Rzeczywiście Jan Paweł II jest niezwykle mocno związany z tym miejscem, tak bardzo.
Indeed, John Paul II is strongly associated with this place, so strongly in fact that this university today is called the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin, so it's difficult to imagine a closer association than that when a university is actually named after the patron. Before John Paul II became John Paul II, he was a professor at the Catholic University of Lublin. Here he was known as Professor Karol Wojtyła. He taught classes on philosophy, he was the head of the department and was one of us. So we had a situation where our professor suddenly becomes the head of the Roman Catholic Church and became the first pope who isn't an Italian from time immemorial. It was truly a Copernican revolution. Now we begin to enter a period which I personally remember as a young man. The moment John Paul II was elected as pope was in its own way a miracle. Many people did not believe something like this could happen. John Paul II's first pilgrimage to Poland in 1979 was a signal that started a chain reaction. A year later, in July 1980, the first workers' protest took place here in Lublin for pay rises and against the political course of the communist authorities. A new form of protest was invented here in Lublin. While earlier in 1956, 68 or 1970, I'm mentioning the various waves of protest that went on in Poland, those striking went out onto the streets and protested. Here in Lublin, something new was thought up. We don't go out into the streets, we stay in our workplaces, we hold an occupational strike and wait until the authorities turn up and talk to us. The authorities came to the Lublin workers and signed an agreement. It fulfilled the basic conditions asked for by the workers. Immediately after the Lublin workers had been successful with their strike, workers in other parts of the country saw this, including Lech Wałęsa and Gdańsk, and then the shipyard in that city stood still, and after it, the whole of Poland. In short, the spark which first lit Poland came from Lublin, and I doubt, although perhaps a historian shouldn't say something like this, that something wouldn't have happened, but it's very unlikely that this would have happened if John Paul II had not appeared at a certain point in Polish history. Of course, the Great Carnival of Solidarity was repressed in 1981 because of martial law, and here Lublin once again became a fighting city. Thankfully, this time without any bloody casualties. This is where workplaces went on strike during the 80s, particularly Świdnik. Students from the Catholic University of Lublin and UMCS were also very active. And indeed, the elections of June 4th, 1989 were organized largely by people who are friends of John Paul II, and this history, this great Polish history, this great European history, is beautifully interwoven with the events in Lublin. 1989 in the Lublin Voivodeship symbolizes not only the independence of Poland, but a great victory of ideas, which were co-created somewhere here in Lublin. The idea of the European Union, which many Lublin residents see as a stemming from the Polish-Lithuanian Union, better known as the Union of Lublin.
Współtworzyły ideę Unii Europejskiej, którą wielu z mieszkańców Lublina zakorzenia w Unii Polsko-Litewskiej, w Unii Lubelskiej.
In July 1980, strikes broke out in the city of Świdnik and quickly spread to Lublin. It was the start of the 10 million men strong Solidarity Trade Union, which within a year would frighten the communist regime to such a degree that the communists cracked down on it by declaring martial law. The Solidarity movement is pretty prominent here in Lublin, and I was wondering if you can tell us about the more prominent figures that are in the movement.
Myślę, że osobami ikonicznymi dla
I think when it comes to iconic characters in the Solidarity movement from Lublin or strongly associated with Lublin, one would definitely be Janusz Krupski. Janusz Krupski studied history here at the university. He began studying in 1969, a year after the events of 1968. He chose this university because he admired the way students were behaving during those events. before Solidarity was formed, Janusz Krupski began creating an illegal opposition in Lublin. And when we talk about the opposition, an important element, the heart of this opposition, was its publishing activity, publishing underground books. Now, in the era of internet, we have no idea what real censorship actually means. This is when full control of information is in the hands of the authorities. What the opposition could do at the beginning was to break the authorities' exclusive stronghold on information. In 1976, Janusz Krupski was the person to start publishing the first underground works in Poland after the war. In this sense, he was responsible for an enormous breakthrough. In this sense, he began a new era of Polish history. His close cooperator was his friend he had studied with, Bogdan Borusewicz. Bogdan Borusewicz, watching what had happened in Lublin, began organizing a strike in Gdańsk. He is the person who was immediately behind Lech Wałęsa. Some researchers say he came up with Lech Wałęsa as the leader of the workers' strike. Bogdan Borusewicz would play an extremely important role in the underground movement many times, and after Poland regained independence, he was, among others, a Marshal of the Senate. Finally, I would name a now-deceased professor of this university, Jerzy Kochanowski, who in truth wasn't directly involved in the underground operations of the Solidarity movement, although he did help the movement, but he was an important person who developed certain ideas. The idea of a Europe of two lungs, which meant Europe wasn't just France, Great Britain or Germany, but also had a second lung, which is Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Belarus and Ukraine, was something he constantly reminded people about, and it was he who helped John Paul II and the Polish government in Free Poland to make the eastern part of Europe equally as important in Europe and the world.
Europa stała się równoważną częścią Europy i świata.
Once the communism finally fell, Lublin has went through a transition period from planned economy to one of free market. And I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit about the change that happened and how it impacted Lublin's economy as a whole.
Przełom lat 80. i 90. z punktu widzenia historii gospodarczej i społecznej.
The 1980s and 90s, from the point of view of social and economic history, as a period of revolution with all the side effects stemming from such a revolution. The old economic system, which was now completely inefficient, fell. It was no longer able to solve the basic problems and needs of Lublin's residents. It must be remembered where Lublin was, where it is in Poland and Europe. Post-war Lublin is a city at the eastern end of Poland and at the eastern end of Europe. What did this mean? It meant that changes occurred most rapidly in central Poland and the big cities. Lublin and the Lublin Voivodeship, in this sense, was wronged. I personally remember the period when unemployment in Lublin was at 30%. For many people this was a drama, but at the same time it was a drama accompanied with the joy of regaining freedom, a fear of tomorrow, whether it will be possible to buy anything with the money earned. But at the same time, another great change occurred, because at the end of the 80s, it's difficult to imagine now, there was absolutely nothing in the shops. The shelves were completely empty, but the transformation at the beginning of the 90s caused the situation to change completely. Up to this point, we had money, but couldn't really buy anything with it, and from 1989 and 1990, the shelves were now full, but we had no money to buy these goods with. Lublin, as I mentioned, a city with many schools, was practically, until the end of the 20th century, a city with the biggest unemployment rate among students. While cities like Gdańsk, Warsaw and Wrocław picked themselves up from this crisis quicker, Lublin was only really able to enjoy the benefits of the transformation at the beginning of the 21st century, and it's only recently that young people have stopped leaving Lublin.
I dopiero od niedawna młodzi ludzie przestali z Lublina wyjeżdżać.
As we have seen today, Lublin has a very long, yet at times dramatic history. But places such as the Catholic University of Lublin sufficiently demonstrated the city spirit and their love for freedom. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Poland Daily Travel, where you learn more about Poland here than in any other place in the world. Today, for this special edition and for the next couple of episodes, we're going to be in the studio. My guest is the loquacious and inimitable know-it-all Artur Górniewski. And we'll be examining together the greatest hits of Polish travel, places that you just won't want to miss when you come to Poland. We'll be skipping over Warsaw since we've covered it over the last few months extensively. And we'll be heading out in our minds to some of the great places like the Tri-City area, including Gdansk and Sopot and Gdynia, and the Hel Peninsula. We'll be talking about the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's explosive hideout in the Missouri and Warmia region of Poland in the northeast. Old Prussia, they call it. And we'll talk about some of the famous castles in Poland. Malbork, Nieborów, and Książ. Not all of them, but some of them, because there are a lot of really, really neat castles in Poland. And palaces. We'll take you on a journey in your mind to Krakow, to Zakopane, and we'll talk a little bit about Auschwitz, which is more of a center for pilgrimage than a tourist attraction, of course. And we'll take you to Białowieża Park on the eastern border with Belarus. There, the ancient bison roam. The lynx and the wolf are at home. It's also the oldest piece of forest left in the European Union. All this and more on the next couple of episodes of Poland Daily Travel. Hey, stick with us. Watch us on YouTube. And if you like it, just take a moment and click that like button. Poland Daily Travel, we do it for you. Thanks for watching. So today, we're in the studio in a slightly different format because we're used to tramping up and down the streets of the metropolis.
Correct. Recently there was walking and talking, and today there's a wheel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, there was a wheel there too. But is there a way?
Well, let's check it out.
We'll find out. We'll find out. So, but you know, we've been concentrating really in Warsaw and some of the Royal Route and
yes.
The Old Town and the New Town. But that's just Warsaw. There's also, what would you say if someone were to ask you, hey, Artur, if you're not going to, say you arrive in Warsaw, where would you go next?
Okay, so
what would you say first?
I would still stay next to Vistula River and then go either north or south. So I can go to Gdańsk or Danzig as we know it.
Yeah.
And this is so-called free city area. There is Gdańsk, there is Gdynia, and there is Sopot. You are having combination of everything over there. You can take a bath in our Baltic Sea. You can visit Solidarity Museum. Swimming.
You can take a bath too, but you got to bring some soap.
Yes, exactly. That's the one.
You can bathe. That's what you meant.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's confusing, isn't it? Because the British say bathe in the sea, and Americans say swim in the ocean. For example, I don't know what Canadians say.
Yeah,
I have to ask them. They probably say like.
No, I think that
Americans
you can just say popływać as we would do it in Polish.
Popływać.
Popływać.
Which means
to swim.
Just to swim.
To have a swim. So you can do this. You can visit Solidarity Museum in Gdańsk, and that's the only museum in my life that made a tear coming out from this eye. It represents determination. It represents resilience of Polish people. To have this, what you said at the moment, the way you advertised our country at the beginning, I just liked it so much because Poland is coming back on a track. Once upon a time, it was obvious that if you want to travel, if you want to see nice spots, you are coming to Poland. And Polish people in the medieval times, in 16th, 17th, 18th century, if there was a traveler in Italy that was speaking fluent Italian, then the first guess was that they were coming from Poland. And it's like and then in Italy, you go from one city to another, and there are such beautiful places over there. In Poland, the same. The name of the number of these places is countless. But we are having this Tri-City. North, there is peninsula called Hel, but just one L at the end, H-E-L, and
that's an fascinating place. It's right across the bay from Sopot and Gdynia and Gdansk.
Yes.
And it's a long spit of land, about 7, 8, 9 miles long, isn't it?
More than this. It's
even
35 kilometers.
Oh, 35 kilometers.
So,
it's
more than
really
20 miles.
Yeah.
And just to walk from the bay to the sea, it's sometimes a 2 minutes walk. So on one side there are...
You mean from one side to the other. So you have this spit of land, and you have the sea over here, the Baltic Sea, and then the bay, and it's quite narrow. So what you're saying is it's very quick to walk across.
And the bay is a shallow.
Right.
So you can windsurf over there, and even if you are just trying this sport out, if you fall into the bay, then the water is up to your waist.
That's it.
And that's it.
You mean the whole?
Not the whole bay, but for a very long time, it's just very. So for people who want to windsurf, for people who want to kite surf, people who want to just be with the rest of the people who are practicing these sports, to spend time on your camping, to just spend time next to the Baltic Sea, and we are having very long connection with the Baltic Sea. It's 700 kilometers of a very wide, sandy, nice beaches where Polish people are spending time, and the Baltic Sea is just fine to relax during the summer.
Bit cold though.
July and August. Well, after 2 beers, it's just fine.
After 2 beers or 2 vodkas or whatever your poison is, it helps, doesn't it, to give you some insulation. But it is a bit chilly. Although the water is quite nice, especially if you go... I like the places if you go further to the left, like from Gdansk, if you're looking north to the left, or to the west towards Germany, you have Webbe, for example, which is amazing, which are amazing sand dunes, which remind me they're very close to the sand dunes in North Carolina, where the Wright brothers were testing their first airplane because it was a soft landing. Enough of a height to start the plane, and then a soft landing if it didn't work out. So Kill Devil Hills, they're called. And it reminds me very much, that part of the Outer Banks of North Carolina, of Webbe. It's very similar.
Yes, exactly.
And beautiful sand dunes.
Yes, we are having national park over there.
Right.
What you are saying at the moment is our national park, protected by the law.
I mean, it looks like the desert, actually. You could film. I know a filmmaker who made a film there with using that as the desert.
Yes, there's the famous situation that these mountains of sand are moving from one place to another. So when you
just
visit
like in the desert.
And that's a very interesting spot. A lot of spa resorts appearing over there, so you can really spend your time in a sophisticated and refined way. And there is a lot of nature over there. If you want, you can go to the party place of Mielno next to Kołobrzeg, or you can visit Międzyzdroje, or you can just book yourself a hotel or an apart hotel, so you can also invest your money over there next to the Baltic Sea, because more and more companies are constructing very luxurious buildings, and people just want to go over there to chill. And you have the Baltic Sea, you have during the winter, it's also very nice.
Let's just say that you have Gdansk.
Yes.
Which is the old port, Danzig, which was a Hanseatic port. Gdansk, famous for solidarity. We said at the Solidarity Museum.
Oh, yes.
Let's just shorthand this so people know. Also Sopot, which is in between Gdansk and Gdynia, the new port that was built.
And the Radisson over there.
Who?
Another Radisson hotel.
Okay, there's a Radisson.
You are just walking out from your hotel. You can leave your flip-flops inside your room, and barefoot you can just enter the beach. How about this?
No, you can't. There's a bit. No, it's a Sheraton actually.
There is a Sheraton over there too.
Hotel. There's a Radisson as well as a Sheraton. I didn't even know. I haven't been to Sopot for a while, but the thing is, they have the big pier in Sopot, and Sopot was a place where the gentry and the well-heeled went traditionally in the beginning of the 20th century and interwar period to relax. So it's a very nice little town. That's the point.
And then Gdynia was another port established in between World War I and World War II, and just in 5 years it caught up
with the number of goods transferred with Gdańsk.
Yeah.
Poland didn't have control of Gdańsk, so we constructed ourselves another port that very quickly became an amazing success of Poland between World War I and World War II.
So they're like bookends, Gdynia and Gdansk on Sopot. This
you
nice...
just drive one street and one city ends, another starts.
Another starts. You can drive one street all the way down. And also the old town in Gdansk, they've done amazing things with renovating that. And really just to walk down the old street, you feel transported to Amsterdam or some other, I say it again, or Copenhagen. It looks like one of those old Hanseatic cities.
And this is what happens at the moment. They are constructing hotels and buildings right next to the river. Actually, it's like on the river. It looks like the river goes under these buildings. And now this is modern stuff constructed. And you have medieval original buildings. So when it comes to Gdańsk, the strongest there is the city of Gdańsk, and next to the city of Gdańsk there is a little hill. So whenever these guys, Swedish, French, Russian, were fighting for this area, they were fighting on a hill. The one who conquers the hill and directs his cannons to the city was making the mayor saying, okay, we're done. We don't want our buildings to be destroyed. By the way, there is the biggest in entire planet Earth church made of red bricks.
In Gdansk?
In Gdańsk.
That's the big cathedral, yeah?
That's the big cathedral, and that's the biggest red clay bricks church constructed on entire planet Earth.
Thanks for watching the first installment of Poland's greatest travel hits. We were talking about the Tri-Cities, Gdansk, Gdynia, and Sopot. Stay tuned for the next episode when we'll be talking about Hitler's Wolf's Lair, Malbork Castle, one of the finest castles in the world, and the Teutonic Knights. See you next time.